Dear colleagues, fellow Americans, and above all to the people of Maryland's wonderful 8th Congressional District, I want to start just by sending love and encouragement and solidarity to all of our fellow citizens who've been taken ill during this terrible crisis and to their families. I'm voting for this bill proudly because this is what government is for. Government is an instrument of the common good to accomplish things for us together as a community that we would not be able to accomplish otherwise on our own. This is a time of profound national crisis, and this is when we need government the most. For those who think that government doesn't matter and that government can't work, we ask you to get out of the way so we can stop all of the distractions and all of the blockades and make real progress to save the lives and the health of our people and to put America back to work again and to restore our communities. There are things that we can be very proud of that are in this legislation, delivering aid to the American people. First of all, $150 billion for hospitals and frontline healthcare providers, so we get the personal protective equipment that our doctors and nurses and other hospital personnel need, the masks and the gowns, the ventilators, and all of the medical equipment that has been such short supply since this administration appears to have been taken by surprise by the whole thing. $377 billion for small business loans and guarantees and grants to get our small businesses through this process, the restaurants and the bars and the local stores, the shoe stores and the drug stores and everybody who's been knocked out of business by this, the hair salons and the barbers, everybody. We want to make sure that small business survives and continues in America. $330 billion for other emergency purposes, including increasing our national stockpile of relevant drugs and medical equipment. We've been stockpiling nuclear weapons. We should be stockpiling the medical provisions that we need to get us through a pandemic like the coronavirus crisis. Money to go to FEMA. So FEMA is ready both to complete this job and to be ready next time if and when we face another pandemic. Money to get the Defense Production Act moving so we put the nation's awesome manufacturing capacity to work to meet the needs of the American people during this crisis. And childcare for frontline healthcare providers, because who's taking care of the kids when the nurses and doctors and orderlies and other hospital personnel are out there taking care of us? Then there's $260 billion in here for unemployment insurance. It's an extraordinary amount for an extraordinary job that we need to do. Millions of Americans have already been thrown out of work during this process. Traditionally, unemployment insurance has covered about 50%, 40%, 50% of people's salaries. We've put in enough money to take care of 100% of people's salaries with an extra $600 a week that we're getting to the states to supplement what the states are now doing. And then we've added an extra 3 months worth of funding to get people through the duration of this crisis. We've also expanded the categories of people who are eligible. So the self-employed, independent contractors, consultants, people in the gig economy will be included in the first time. We've got tens of millions of Americans who are not on monthly payrolls working for someone else. They're working for themselves, and we've got to make sure that we get them through and get their families through this process as well. And I'm proud of all of those provisions that we fought for in the House of Representatives. Now, this is not perfect legislation. It is a compromise between the Democratic-controlled House and the Republican-controlled Senate, which has packed the legislation on their side with a lot of corporate pork. We were able to scale back some of the worst provisions and build some limitations and some controls on what they wanted to do. The bottom line is there is $500 billion in here that the president and the secretary of the treasury are going to be able to dole out to different businesses. Now, we've said none of it can go to the president's own businesses or any member of Congress's businesses. We've also said none of it can go for the purposes of corporate dividends or for the purposes of bloated CEO or other executive bonuses. And none of it can go for buybacks of stock, which means just building money up for the shareholders. It's got to go really to save the jobs of people in the industries and to keep the businesses going. But there are other ways that the Senate really fell down in this legislation. They treated the good people of Washington, D.C., 700,000 tax-paying, draftable American citizens, like people in the territories, thereby cheating them out of $500 million that they would get if they were being treated like people of the states, which they have been treated like for purposes of other programs and other distribution of federal funds. That's something that we're going to have to rectify right when we get back there. There are a lot of little nasty booby traps and rip-offs that have been tucked into this legislation, a lot of tax loopholes that were carved out, and we're going to do everything we can to rectify it and turn it around. But the bottom line is we could not allow the perfect to be the enemy of the good, much less the enemy of the necessary. And this legislation is necessary, and it is a compromise with the Republican-controlled Senate. Nobody thinks this legislation is ideal, but it is a necessity for the American people. I'm going to close with the words of the great Tom Paine, who said, "These are the times that try men and women's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will shrink at this moment from the service of their cause and their country, but everyone who stands with us now will win the love and the favor and the affection of every man and every woman for all time. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered, but we have this saving consolation. The more difficult the struggle, the more glorious in the end is our victory." So this disease is a form of tyranny, just like tyranny is tyranny. We have got to stick together and stand by each other. In America, we take care of our own. We take care of other people, and we will take care of every American who is struggling under the weight of this terrible crisis. And I am proud that we're doing this in our third piece of legislation, and we're not done yet. I yield back and thank you all for being involved in this process.